Wheelchair user escapes orphanage and finds a mysterious island. What he discovers there changes his life. Tyler Mitchell woke before sunrise, as he had every morning for 3 months. The 12-year-old boy knew this would be the last time he would hear the annoying sound of the alarm clock, breaking the silence of the communal dormitory. His small hands trembled as he checked for the last time the backpack hidden under the mattress, where he had kept for weeks some dry bread, a water bottle, and the few coins he had managed to save. The discovery of the torn photo in the trash 3 days earlier had changed everything. It was a picture of a smiling woman next to a rustic house with palm trees in the background and a crystal-clear river. On the back, someone had written in feminine handwriting, "To my son, with all my love, your mother, Elizabeth." Tyler's heart had raced. Could it be that he finally had a clue about his origin? St. Christopher's Orphanage was located in the countryside of Tennessee, in the town of Clear Springs, and housed more than 40 abandoned children. Tyler had arrived there at 3 years old, with no information about his family. The staff had always told him he had been found in a square inside a cardboard box, with only a note saying, "Please take good care of him." All these years, the boy had created fantasies about who his mother might be. Sometimes he imagined she was a princess who had to give him up to save a kingdom. Other times he thought she was an important scientist, working on secret missions. But reality always brought him back to the cold floor of the orphanage, where he was just another disabled child that no one wanted to adopt. The wheelchair had entered his life at 5 years old, after a fall down the stairs that caused a spinal cord injury. The orphanage director, Mr. Gerald, a man in his early 50s with a perpetually stern face, had classified the accident as carelessness and never showed any kind of emotional support to the boy. Since then, Tyler had learned to live with physical limitations, but he had also developed an iron determination that impressed even the most experienced staff. He could do almost everything by himself, from taking a bath to helping in the kitchen, always finding creative ways to overcome obstacles. The decision to run away had slowly matured in his mind. First, he began observing the staff's schedules, memorizing when the gate was unlocked and what the blind spots in surveillance were. Then, he spent weeks collecting materials, old ropes from the storage room, wooden planks left over from repairs, rusty nails he found in the yard. His plan was risky, but he had calculated every detail. The photo showed a house on an island in the middle of a river, and Tyler was sure it was somewhere nearby. The Stone River flowed right behind the orphanage, and he knew it would be possible to build an improvised raft to sail downstream. When the first ray of sunlight crossed the dormitory window, Tyler put the plan into action. He slid silently from the bed into the wheelchair, careful not to wake the other boys. The main hallway was empty, and the sound of the small wheels on the cement floor echoed softly as he headed for the back exit. The back gate was always left ajar during the early morning, a negligence Mr. Gerald was unaware of. Tyler passed through it and felt the fresh morning air touch his face. Freedom was there, right in front of him, but he knew the real challenges were yet to come. The path to the river was not easy. The uneven ground made the wheelchair shake with every meter, and several times Tyler had to stop to readjust his position. His hands were already sore when he finally reached the bank of Stone River, where he had hidden the materials collected over the past weeks. The raft he had built was no work of art, but it would be enough for what he needed. 3 planks tied together with ropes, a long pole for propulsion, and an extra rope to hold onto if something went wrong. The biggest challenge would be transferring the wheelchair onto the makeshift vessel without both of them sinking. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. With great effort and some dangerous maneuvers, Tyler managed to position the wheelchair in the center of the raft. The planks gave a little under the weight but held firm. He pushed the vessel into the water and began sailing downstream, using the pole to propel himself and maintain direction. The sun was now fully rising, painting the sky in orange hues that reflected on the crystal-clear water. Tyler had never seen the world from the river's perspective, and for a few moments he forgot his worries, marveling at the beauty of nature around him. White herons flew low over the water, and fish occasionally jumped, creating concentric circles on the calm surface. However, the tranquility didn't last long. The current was stronger than he had anticipated, and he soon realized he was losing control of the direction. The raft began to spin, and one of the ropes holding the planks started to loosen. Panic gripped the boy when he noticed his wheelchair slowly sliding toward the edge. It was at this critical moment that a thick branch from a fallen tree appeared in front of him. Tyler managed to grab it with one hand, stabilizing the raft and preventing the wheelchair from ending up in the water. His strength was at its limit, and he had to use all his determination to pull the vessel back into the calmer course of the river. The scare made him rethink the situation. Perhaps this adventure was more dangerous than he had imagined, but when he looked back and saw the orphanage becoming smaller and smaller in the distance, he knew there was no turning back. The photo in his pocket seemed to pulse like a heart, constantly reminding him why he was there. After nearly 2 hours of sailing, Tyler spotted something that made his heart race. In the middle of the river, exactly like in the photo, was a small rocky island with a simple house on top. Palm trees swayed gently in the morning breeze, and a thin column of smoke rose from the chimney, indicating someone was home. Approaching the island was tricky. The submerged rocks created small rapids that pushed the raft away from the shore. Tyler had to make several attempts before he managed to beach the vessel on a small sandy beach on the more sheltered side of the island. The landing was even more challenging than the boarding. The wheelchair got stuck in the soft sand, and Tyler had to use his arms to drag himself to firmer ground. His clothes got dirty and wet, but he was finally on the mysterious island from the photograph. The path to the house was steep and uneven, impossible to navigate in a wheelchair. Tyler decided to hide it behind some rocks and continue dragging himself with his arms, determined to discover who lived in that isolated place. As he approached the building, he could see it was a well-kept house, with a herb garden and some chickens pecking in the yard. Clothes were drying on a line, and the smell of fresh bread came from the kitchen. Everything indicated this was the home of someone who had chosen to live far from civilization. When he was just a few meters from the front door, a woman's voice shouted from inside the house, "Who's there? Stay away from my property!" Tyler froze, unsure how to respond. He hadn't thought about what he would say when he finally found someone on the island. The door swung open violently, and a woman of about 45 appeared, gripping a hoe as if it were a weapon. "I told you to stay away. How did you get here?" she shouted, visibly frightened. Elizabeth Christine Harper had graying brown hair tied in a ponytail, a sunburned face, and hands calloused from working the land. Her brown eyes showed fear and distrust, but when she saw the boy on the ground, her expression changed completely. "My God, you're just a child. Are you hurt?" she said, dropping the hoe and moving closer. "Please don't send me away," begged Tyler, his voice choked. "I came looking for my mother." Elizabeth stopped abruptly, as if she'd been slapped. Something in the boy's face seemed familiar, but she couldn't place what it was. "Your mother? Child, I'm the only one who lives here. There must be some mistake." Tyler pulled the crumpled photo from his pocket and showed it to her. "I found this in the orphanage trash. It's you, isn't it? And it says, 'For my son' on the back." Elizabeth took the photo with trembling hands. It was indeed a photograph of her, taken years ago. But how had this child found it? And why was he associating it with his mother? "Where did you come from? How did you get here?" she asked, still in shock. "I ran away from St. Christopher's Orphanage in Clear Springs. I built a raft and came down the river. Please tell me you're my mother. I've always dreamed of finding you." Elizabeth's heart tightened. She had indeed had a son years ago, but the circumstances of her life at the time had forced painful decisions she preferred to forget. Looking at this determined, brave boy who had risked everything to find her, she felt a mix of admiration and despair. "Come inside, child. You're wet and must be hungry. We'll talk calmly later." Tyler smiled for the first time in months. Perhaps he had finally found what he'd been searching for his whole life. Elizabeth helped the boy into the house, improvising with a regular chair for support. The house was simple but cozy, with handmade wooden furniture and dried medicinal plants hanging from the ceiling beams. A wood-burning stove kept the place warm, and the smell of aromatic herbs filled every room. "What's your name?" asked Elizabeth, pouring a cup of hot tea. Tyler Mitchell. But at the orphanage, everyone just calls me Tyler. And you? Elizabeth. Elizabeth Christine Harper. The name echoed in Tyler's ears like a familiar melody. Had he heard that name before, or was it just his imagination wanting to believe he had found his family? Mrs. Elizabeth, may I ask why you live alone on this island? Elizabeth looked away, nervously wringing her hands. It was a question she avoided answering, even to herself. It's a complicated story, child. Sometimes life forces people to make difficult choices. Like the choice to abandon a child. Tyler's direct question caught Elizabeth by surprise. The boy had made the connection she was trying to avoid, and now there was no way to escape the conversation. Tyler, I really did have a son many years ago, but I don't know if you... The dates, the circumstances. Please, tell me the whole story. I need to know. Elizabeth sighed deeply, knowing the moment had come to face the past she had tried to bury. When I was 22, I married James Robert Harper, a farmer from this region. It was a marriage arranged by our families, very common at the time. I didn't love him, but I thought in time I might learn to care for him. Tyler listened attentively without interrupting, noting how Elizabeth's voice grew weaker with each word. James Robert was a controlling and violent man. He would beat me for any reason and wouldn't let me leave the house without his permission. When I got pregnant, I thought the baby's arrival might change things, but he got even worse. And what happened to the baby? When my son was born, James Robert said a child would be a burden to our life. He arranged contacts to have the baby put up for adoption, even against my will. I tried to resist, but he threatened me with violence. Elizabeth stopped to wipe the tears that began to stream down her face. One night, 3 days after giving birth, James Robert took my son away while I was sedated and asleep. When I woke up, he was gone. James Robert said the baby was better off without us, and that I should forget he ever existed. And you never tried to look for him? I did, Tyler. I searched for years. I visited every orphanage in the region, spoke with social workers, paid private investigators. But James Robert had been very careful to erase any trace. Tyler felt a mix of hope and anguish. Elizabeth's story matched some things he knew about his own origin, but there were still many doubts. How long did your son stay with you before he was taken? Only 3 days. 3 days that were worth a lifetime. And what year did this happen? Elizabeth calculated mentally before answering. It was 2011. My son was born on March 15th, 2011. Tyler's heart raced. According to the orphanage documents, he had been born on exactly that date. The coincidence was too great to ignore. Mrs. Elizabeth, I was born on March 15th, 2011. And the orphanage documents say I was found when I was 3 years old, which means I spent the first years of my life with someone. Elizabeth turned pale. The dates matched perfectly, but she didn't want to create false hopes, neither for herself nor for the boy. Tyler, there could be other explanations. Many children were born on that date, and I don't even know where James Robert took my son. But do you have any mark or characteristic your son had? Something that could help identify him? Elizabeth hesitated before answering. There was indeed a particular mark she had never forgotten. My son had a birthmark on his right arm. It was small, shaped like a crescent moon right here, she said, touching her own arm. Tyler rolled up his shirt sleeve, revealing exactly the same mark Elizabeth had described. The silence in the house was absolute for a few seconds. My God, is it possible? Whispered Elizabeth. Mrs. Elizabeth, I think I've found my mother, said Tyler with tears in his eyes. Elizabeth approached and hugged the boy for the first time, feeling a mix of joy and pain she had held onto for 9 years. But even in that emotional moment, a part of her mind remained skeptical. Could it really be possible that after so much time and suffering, fate had reunited mother and son in such an unlikely way? Tyler, even if you really are my son, I don't know if I can properly care for you. Look at my physical limitations, and I live isolated on this island without proper medical or educational resources. I don't need much, Mrs. Elizabeth. I just want to have a family. At the orphanage, I learned to manage on my own. I can help with house chores, tend the garden, fish. Just please don't send me back." The boy's humility and determination touched Elizabeth deeply. She saw in him the same willpower that had helped her survive the years of suffering in the marriage and the loneliness on the island. "All right, you can stay for a few days while we figure out what to do, but we need to be realistic about the difficulties we'll face." Tyler smiled as he hadn't smiled in years. For the first time in his life, he felt he was where he was supposed to be. In the following days, Elizabeth watched, fascinated, as Tyler adapted to life on the island. The boy showed impressive creativity in overcoming his physical limitations. He invented ways to help in the kitchen using stools and improvised adaptations, created a system of ropes to move around the house when the wheelchair wasn't practical, and even developed techniques for fishing while sitting on a rock at the island's edge. "Where did you learn to be so independent?" asked Elizabeth admiringly. "At the orphanage, no one had time to help me with everything. Either I learned to manage or I'd be dependent on others forever. I chose to learn." Tyler's simple, direct answer revealed a maturity that touched Elizabeth's heart. She began to realize that her worries about not being able to properly care for the boy were unfounded. In fact, it was Tyler who was taking care of her, bringing joy and purpose to a life that had become empty and lonely. During the third day on the island, while organizing some belongings in the house, Tyler made a discovery that would change everything again. Under a loose floorboard, he found a photo album that Elizabeth had kept hidden. The first pages showed pictures from Elizabeth's wedding, where she appeared young and beautiful, but with a sad expression in her eyes. On the following pages there were some pregnancy photos, where her belly was evident, but her face remained melancholy. It was on the last page of the album that Tyler found what changed his perspective on everything. There was a photo of Elizabeth in the hospital, holding a newborn baby. But the baby in the picture had features that were clearly different from his own. The child in the image had light hair and lighter skin, while Tyler had always had dark hair and olive skin. "Mrs. Elizabeth," he called, his voice trembling, "can I look at this photo with you?" Elizabeth immediately recognized the photograph Tyler was holding. It was the only image she had managed to keep of her real son before James Robert discovered it and threatened her. "Tyler, I can explain. The baby in this photo isn't me, is it?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Elizabeth lowered her head, unable to meet the boy's gaze. "No, it's not you. I knew from the moment you arrived here that something didn't add up. The dates matched, but there were differences I tried to ignore." Tyler's world collapsed again. For a few days, he had experienced the feeling of having a family, of belonging somewhere. Now he discovered that it had all been nothing but a cruel coincidence. "So I'm not your son?" he asked, tears streaming down his face. "Biologically, no. But Tyler, that doesn't mean you're not important to me. These last few days have been the best I've had in years. You brought life to this empty house. But I'm not your real family. I'm just another orphan who fooled himself into thinking he'd found his mother." Elizabeth saw the pain in the boy's eyes and felt her own heart break. At that moment, she made a decision that surprised even herself. "Tyler, I may not be your biological mother, but if you want, I can become your mother in heart. Family isn't just about blood. It's about love, care, and choice. You would really do that for me?" "I would. But first we need to settle some practical matters. You ran away from an orphanage, and they must be looking for you. Also, there are legal adoption procedures we need to follow." Tyler wiped his tears and smiled timidly. "If you really want to adopt me, I want to stay. I don't mind the difficulties. Then let's find a way to make it possible." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. However, Elizabeth and Tyler's decision would not be as simple to implement as they had imagined. On the fourth day after the boys' arrival on the island, they were surprised by the unexpected arrival of Benjamin Mitchell, a 68-year-old man who knew the region like the back of his hand. Benjamin was an old fisherman who lived alone in a simple house on the riverbank about 3 kilometers from the island. He appeared rowing an old canoe looking for medicinal plants that grew only on Elizabeth's island. "Good morning, Mrs. Elizabeth," he shouted, still in the water. "May I come ashore? I need some herbs for my rheumatism." Elizabeth felt a chill in her stomach. Benjamin was one of the few people who knew her true identity and history. She had confided some details about her past to him during one of the rare occasions he had visited to trade fish for natural remedies. "Of course, Mr. Benjamin. Please come." When Benjamin set foot on the island and saw Tyler, his expression changed completely. "Mrs. Elizabeth, where did this child come from, and why is he in a wheelchair?" "It's a long story, Mr. Benjamin. The boy's name is Tyler, and, well, I'm taking care of him temporarily." Benjamin was known in the region for his wisdom and life experience. He had worked for decades as a boatman, transporting people and goods along the river, and knew practically every family in the area. "Son, what did you say your name was, and where are you from?" "Tyler Mitchell, sir. I came from St. Christopher's Orphanage in Clear Springs." Benjamin's eyes widened. "St. Christopher's Orphanage? I know that place well. I've delivered some donations there over the years. And you ran away from there?" "Yes, sir. I was looking for my family." Benjamin looked back and forth between Tyler and Elizabeth, trying to understand the situation. "Mrs. Elizabeth, may I speak with you in private?" Elizabeth agreed, and they moved a few meters away from Tyler. "Mrs. Elizabeth, I don't want to meddle where I'm not invited, but I need to tell you something important. 2 days ago, when I was in town selling fish, I learned that the authorities are looking for a missing child from the orphanage. The description matches this boy exactly." Elizabeth felt the ground fall away beneath her feet. "What do you mean? What kind of search?" "The orphanage director is offering a reward for anyone who brings information about the child's whereabouts. He hired a fisherman named Anthony Patterson to comb the riverbanks. Anthony is a greedy man who would do anything for money." "Mr. Benjamin, what do you think we should do?" Benjamin scratched his grey beard, thoughtful. "Mrs. Elizabeth, I understand you've grown fond of the boy, but hiding a runaway child could bring serious trouble for all of us. On the other hand, if the boy ran away, he must have his reasons." Elizabeth explained the whole story to Benjamin, how Tyler had arrived on the island, the confusion about their possible family connection, and the decision to try for a legal adoption. "You have good intentions, Mrs. Elizabeth, but there are many obstacles ahead. First, you live isolated here, with no fixed income or proper structure to care for a child with special needs. Second, your legal situation isn't the best either." "What do you mean, my legal situation?" "Mrs. Elizabeth, technically you are still a missing person. When you fled that marriage 15 years ago, you never regularized your status. Your husband filed a missing persons report, and even after he passed away last year, you've continued living as if you don't exist." The revelation that James Robert had passed away was a shock to Elizabeth. She was unaware of the information and felt a mix of relief and sadness upon learning that her marital nightmare had definitively ended. "How did you find out about James Robert's situation?" "Everyone in the area talked about it when he passed. It was a sudden heart attack. The farmlands were inherited by a nephew who lives in Nashville." Elizabeth needed to sit down to process all the information. For 15 years she had lived in fear that James Robert would find her, and now she discovered he could no longer hurt her. "But does this mean I'm free to resume my normal life?" "Legally, yes, but you will need to sort out your documentation, prove your identity, settle inheritance matters, among other things. It's a complicated process." Tyler, who had been observing the serious conversation between the adults, approached in his wheelchair. "Mrs. Elizabeth, if my presence here is causing problems for you, I can leave. I don't want you to be harmed because of me." The boy's generosity and maturity touched both Elizabeth and Benjamin. "No, Tyler, I won't abandon you. We'll find a way to sort all this out together." Benjamin watched the interaction between the two and realized a genuine bond was forming there. "Look, you two, I have a proposal. How about I help you resolve these legal matters the right way? I know some people in town who can guide us on how to proceed with the adoption and getting Mrs. Elizabeth's situation sorted." "You would do that for us?" asked Tyler, hopeful. "Son, I've lived a long time in this world, and I've learned that sometimes the right people meet at the right time. You two met for a reason, and I want to help that destiny come true." From that moment on, Benjamin became a key piece in the puzzle that was Elizabeth and Tyler's life. He began making regular trips to town, bringing information about the necessary legal procedures and discreetly probing the situation at the orphanage. The news he brought wasn't always encouraging. The orphanage director, Mr. Gerald, had intensified the search for Tyler and had begun asking local authorities about Elizabeth, suspecting the child might be hidden on the island. Mr. Gerald is telling everyone that the missing child might be in danger and that whoever is hiding him could be charged with kidnapping, reported Benjamin during one of his visits. But that's not fair, protested Tyler. I came here on my own. No one kidnapped me. Unfortunately, son, in the eyes of the law, you are a minor and were in state custody. Your escape can be interpreted in various ways by lawyers. Elizabeth felt the weight of responsibility growing on her shoulders. She wanted to protect Tyler, but she also couldn't ignore the possible legal consequences of her actions. Mr. Benjamin, how long do you think we have before they find us? If I were to guess, I'd say a few weeks at most. Anthony Patterson is persistent when money is involved, and sooner or later he will search this area of the river. The time pressure led Elizabeth to make a courageous decision. Mr. Benjamin, I want you to take me to town tomorrow. I will present myself to the authorities voluntarily and explain the whole situation. Mrs. Elizabeth, that could be very risky, warned Benjamin. It might be, but it's the right thing to do. I can't keep living in hiding, and Tyler deserves a normal life with guaranteed rights. Tyler was silent for a few moments before speaking. If you go to town, I want to go too. I won't let you face this alone. Tyler, it could be dangerous for you. The orphanage will want to take you back immediately. I know, Mrs. Elizabeth. But if we truly are a family now, we face problems together. The boy's courage inspired Elizabeth even more in her determination to do things the right way. The next morning, the three set off for town in a larger canoe that Benjamin had borrowed from a neighbor. The journey was tense, with Elizabeth and Tyler nervous about what awaited them, but also determined to fight for their right to stay together. Arriving in town, their first stop was the county clerk's office, where Elizabeth began the process of regularizing her documentation. The clerk who assisted them, Mrs. Carman, was a woman in her 50s who knew Elizabeth's story from the local newspapers at the time. Elizabeth Christine Harper, the young woman who disappeared 15 years ago. My God, where have you been all this time? All this. Elizabeth briefly explained her situation, omitting only the exact location where she had taken refuge. And this boy? Asked Mrs. Carman, looking at Tyler. He's a child I'm interested in adopting. We want to make everything legal. Mrs. Carman reviewed the documents and made some notes. Elizabeth, your situation is complex but not impossible to resolve. As for the adoption, it will require a longer process, with social and psychological evaluations and a home study. How long does that process usually take, say, asked Elizabeth. On average, 6 months to 2 years, depending on the circumstances. Tyler and Elizabeth exchanged glances, worried about how long they would have to wait. And in the meantime, where would the child stay? Asked Benjamin. Technically, he should return to state custody until the process is complete. It was at that moment that the door to the clerk's office swung open violently, and Mr. Gerald entered accompanied by 2 social workers. There he is, shouted the orphanage director, pointing at Tyler. This woman kidnapped one of our children. The situation became tense immediately. Elizabeth positioned herself protectively in front of Tyler, while Benjamin tried to mediate. Easy, everyone. Let's resolve this civilly, said Benjamin. One of the social workers, a young woman named Margaret, approached Elizabeth. Ma'am, I need you to come with us to clarify the situation regarding this child. I came here voluntarily to sort out the situation, explained Elizabeth. I didn't kidnap anyone. That's a lie, interrupted Mr. Gerald. This woman influenced a vulnerable child to run away from our institution. That's a crime. Tyler, who had remained silent until then, decided to speak. Mr. Gerald, nobody influenced me to do anything. I ran away because I wanted to find my family, and I did. Mrs. Elizabeth took me in and wants to adopt me legally. Young man, you've been manipulated. A 12-year-old child doesn't have the capacity to make that kind of decision. The social worker, Margaret, looked at Tyler more closely. How are you feeling? Has anyone hurt you or forced you to do anything? No, ma'am. On the contrary, "These have been the best days of my life. Mrs. Elizabeth has treated me like a real son, not like a burden nobody wants." Tyler's sincerity and maturity impressed Margaret, who began to question whether the situation was really a kidnapping case. "Mr. Gerald, may I speak with the child in private?" and she asked. "Of course, but don't be fooled. This woman has clearly brainwashed the boy." Margaret took Tyler to a private room in the clerk's office, where they could talk without the pressure of the adult's presence. "Tyler, I need you to tell me the truth about everything that happened. Don't be afraid. No one will punish you for telling the truth." The boy told his whole story. Life at the orphanage, finding the photo, running away, arriving on the island, and the time he spent with Elizabeth. He spoke in detail about how he felt valued and loved for the first time in his life. "And you really want to stay with Mrs. Elizabeth?" "More than anything in the world, ma'am. She is not my birth mother, but she is the only person who has made me feel like I have worth." Margaret was moved by Tyler's account. Having worked for years with institutionalized children, she knew how to recognize when a minor was genuinely happy and well cared for. When they returned to the main room, Margaret had a thoughtful expression. "Mr. Gerald, I need to inform you that the child shows no signs of having suffered any kind of violence or manipulation. On the contrary, he demonstrates being in excellent emotional state." "That's impossible. He ran away from our institution." "He did run away, yes. And according to his own account, the reason was the search for a family, something which, I must remind you, is the right of every child." Mr. Gerald turned red with anger. "You cannot allow a crazy woman who lives isolated on an island to adopt a disabled child. This is irresponsible." Elizabeth was offended by the comment. "Sir, I may not have much money, but I have love to offer. And in 15 days, Tyler has shown more progress and happiness than he probably had in years at your orphanage." "That is a very serious accusation," countered Mr. Gerald. "It's the truth," said Tyler. "At the orphanage, I was treated as a burden. Here on the island, I help with chores, I learn new things every day, and I feel useful." Margaret intervened again. "I will propose a middle ground solution. Tyler can stay temporarily with Mrs. Elizabeth under social worker supervision while we assess the conditions for a possible adoption. During this period, we will make regular visits to monitor the situation." "This is absurd," protested Mr. Gerald. "It is what the law allows, and what is best for the child," Margaret replied firmly. Benjamin, who had observed the entire discussion, decided to contribute. "I commit to serving as a sort of responsible tutor, visiting the island regularly and reporting any problems to the authorities." Margaret's proposal was provisionally accepted, but Mr. Gerald made it clear he would not give up easily. "You will regret this. That woman is not equipped to properly care for a special needs child. When the boy gets hurt or sick, remember who warned you about the risks." Despite the orphanage director's threats, Elizabeth and Tyler left the notary's office with a partial victory. They had won the right to stay together temporarily, but they knew they would still have to prove they formed a functional and loving family. Back on the island, mother and adoptive son began to prepare for the evaluations to come. Elizabeth knew she would need to demonstrate that she could offer adequate medical care, quality education, and emotional stability for Tyler. "Mrs. Elizabeth, I know people doubt if you can take care of me because of my wheelchair, but I want you to know that you have already done more for me than any doctor or therapist." "How so, Tyler?" "You taught me that I can be useful, that I can contribute to something. At the orphanage, I was just another mouth to feed. Here, I am part of a family." Tyler's words deeply touched Elizabeth, who began to realize that perhaps she had more to offer than she imagined. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. 2 weeks after the first visit to the city, Margaret made her first official visit to the island to evaluate Tyler's living conditions. She arrived accompanied by a child psychologist, Dr. Francis Oliver. What they found pleasantly surprised both professionals. Tyler had created a structured and productive routine on the island. He woke up early, helped Elizabeth with household chores using creative adaptations, dedicated a few hours to studying using books Benjamin had brought from the city, and in the afternoon practiced physical exercises. He had developed himself to strengthen his arms and improve coordination. "Tyler, who taught you these exercises?" asked Dr. Francis. "No one, doctor. I created them myself by observing what my body could do and trying to improve a little each day." "And did Mrs. Elizabeth supervise?" asked Margaret. "At first, yes, but I soon realized Tyler knew exactly what he was doing. He has an incredible body awareness for a 12-year-old child." Dr. Francis was intrigued by the progress Tyler had shown in such a short time. "Tyler, can you show me some of the exercises you created?" The boy proudly demonstrated a series of movements he had developed using tree branches for support, stones as weights, and breathing techniques he had learned by watching Elizabeth during her morning meditation practices. "This is remarkable," commented the psychologist. "In a clinical setting, with professional equipment, I rarely see such significant progress in such a short time. Doctor, here on the island I feel motivated to improve. I don't do exercises because I'm forced to, but because I want to help Mrs. Elizabeth more and be useful to our family." The word family echoed significantly in the minds of the two professionals. During the psychological evaluation, Dr. Francis administered a series of tests and questionnaires to both Tyler and Elizabeth. The results revealed a genuine and healthy emotional bond between the two. "Elizabeth, how do you feel about the responsibility of caring for a child with special needs?" asked the psychologist. "Doctor, I've learned that Tyler's special needs are not limitations, they are characteristics. He taught me there's always a creative way to solve any problem." "And you, Tyler, how do you feel living with Elizabeth?" "I feel complete, Doctor. For the first time in my life, I'm not just a special child, I'm Mrs. Elizabeth's son." The answers moved even the professionals accustomed to dealing with difficult cases. However, not everything was settled. Margaret identified some practical issues that needed to be addressed. "Elizabeth, we need to talk about formal education and medical care. How do you plan to resolve these issues living isolated on the island?" "I've been thinking about that, Margaret. Benjamin told me about the possibility of distance learning and also about doctors who make home visits in the region. Those are valid solutions, but they need to be formally implemented." Dr. Francis had an additional concern. "Elizabeth, are you financially able to support a child? Adoption is an expensive process, and there are ongoing costs with education and health." The question touched on a sensitive point. Elizabeth lived very simply on the island, surviving with a small vegetable garden, a few chickens, and occasionally trading medicinal herbs for supplies with Benjamin and other residents of the area. I don't have much money, Doctor, but I have land. When I married James Robert, we received some properties as a dowry that technically are still mine. Could you sell that land to finance raising Tyler?" "If necessary, yes. But I was thinking of something different." Elizabeth explained an idea that had been maturing in her mind since Tyler arrived on the island. "Dr. Francis, during these weeks observing Tyler, I realized the island's natural environment has an incredible therapeutic effect on him. What if we transformed this place into a natural rehabilitation center for children with special needs?" The idea took everyone by surprise. "How would that work?" asked Margaret, interested. "Well, we could offer rehabilitation programs using natural resources, hydrotherapy in the river, exercises with stones and branches, therapeutic gardening activities, adaptive fishing, all supervised by qualified professionals." Dr. Francis was excited by the proposal. "Elizabeth, that's a brilliant idea. There are studies that prove the benefits of nature in the rehabilitation process, but it would be an ambitious project requiring a lot of planning and resources." "I know, Doctor, but if we could make it work, not only would Tyler have a better life, but we could help many other children." Tyler listened to everything with shining eyes. "Mrs. Elizabeth, I would love to help other children like me. I could teach the exercises I created and show how it's possible to be happy even with limitations." The prospect of Tyler helping other children deeply moved the two professionals. "I'll speak with my superiors about this proposal," said Margaret. "If it's viable, it could be an innovative solution for many problems we face in the social welfare system." When Margaret and Dr. Francis left the island, They carried with them a very positive report about Tyler and Elizabeth's situation. However, they also warned about the need to implement structural improvements on the island before the project could be officially approved. In the following days, Elizabeth and Tyler began working feverishly to improve the island's conditions. With Benjamin's help, they built a covered area for activities on rainy days, created a small dock to facilitate visitor access, and better organized the house space to accommodate potential guests. But the challenges were just beginning. Mr. Gerald had not given up on getting Tyler back, and he began spreading rumors in town about the inadequate conditions the child was supposedly living in. "Have you seen how irresponsible it is to leave a disabled child isolated on an island?" he commented in town establishments. "When something bad happens, they'll see I was right." The malicious comments reached Benjamin's ears, who became worried about the impact they could have on the official evaluation of the adoption process. "Mrs. Elizabeth, Mr. Gerald is campaigning to harm you," he reported during one of his visits. "What is he saying?" "That the island is a dangerous place for children, that you are not in a position to properly care for Tyler, that the boy could drown or get hurt without immediate medical assistance." Elizabeth felt her anguish grow. She knew some of the comments had a real basis. The island did present some risks, and they were far from emergency medical resources. "Mr. Benjamin, do you think we should give up?" "Mrs. Elizabeth, I think you should prepare better to face these criticisms. What if we implement some additional safety measures?" Benjamin's suggestion led Elizabeth and Tyler to rethink several practical issues. They installed protective railings in more dangerous areas of the island, created a radio communication system with the riverbank, and established clear emergency protocols. Tyler contributed significantly to these improvements, using his unique perspective as a person with physical limitations to identify points that could be problematic for other special needs children. "Mrs. Elizabeth, if this place is going to receive other children like me, we need ramps here and here," he said, pointing to some steep passages. "And we also need to think about children with different types of limitations," he added. "Some may have vision or hearing issues." Tyler's maturity and comprehensive vision constantly impressed Elizabeth. The boy was transforming into a true co-creator of the project, not just a beneficiary. 3 weeks after the first official evaluation, an unexpected event would test all of Elizabeth and Tyler's preparation. A tropical storm hit the region, causing significant flooding in the river and completely isolating the island for 4 days. During this critical period, Elizabeth and Tyler had to handle various challenges alone: lack of electricity, scarcity of drinking water, and the need to protect the house structure against strong winds. It was a real test of their survival capabilities and teamwork. Tyler surprised Elizabeth with his calm and creativity during the crisis. He improvised a rainwater collection system using tarps and buckets, created an alternative stove using stones and dry branches, and even helped reinforce the house windows with wooden planks. "Tyler, where did you learn to do all this?" asked Elizabeth, admiring the boy's resourcefulness. "At the orphanage, Mrs. Elizabeth. When there are few resources and many problems, you learn to make do with what you have. The storm experience further strengthened the bond between mother and adopted son, but also exposed some real vulnerabilities of living isolated on the island." When the waters receded and Benjamin finally managed to get to the island to check on them, he brought worrying news. "Mr. Gerald used the storm to argue that you're in constant danger on the island. He went to the authorities saying the child could have gotten hurt or even, well, you know." Elizabeth understood the gravity of the situation. The orphanage director was using the storm as evidence that the island was an unsuitable place for a child. "And what did the authorities say?" "Margaret is trying to defend you, but there's pressure to conduct a new emergency evaluation." It was at that moment that Tyler made a surprising decision. "Mr. Benjamin, can you take a message to the social worker, Margaret?" "Of course, son." "What do you want to say?" "Tell her that I would like to organize a special visit. I want her to bring some children from the orphanage to spend a day on the island with us." Elizabeth and Benjamin were surprised by the proposal. "Tyler, are you sure? This could be risky. If something goes wrong during the visit..." "Mrs. Elizabeth, I want to show everyone that this place isn't dangerous, but special." And I want other children to see that it's possible to be happy even with limitations. Tyler's courage and determination were contagious. Elizabeth decided to fully support the boy's idea. "All right, Tyler, let's organize this visit. But we have to prepare very well, so everything goes perfectly." Benjamin was impressed by the 12-year-old boy's maturity and strategic vision. "Son, you're proposing to use their very concern as an opportunity to prove your point. That's very smart." During the following week, Elizabeth and Tyler worked tirelessly to organize the special visit. They created safe and fun activities, prepared a healthy snack system using produce from the island's garden, and established clear safety protocols for each activity. Tyler was especially creative in adapting his exercises and discoveries to be accessible to children with different types of physical limitations. Mrs. Elizabeth, for the child who has a problem with the left leg, they can do this exercise by leaning more on the right. And for those who have difficulty with their arms, they can use their legs to help. Tyler's ability to think inclusively impressed Elizabeth, who began to realize the boy had a natural talent for helping other people with similar limitations. When Margaret received the message through Benjamin, she was intrigued by the proposal. After discussing with Dr. Francis and other colleagues, she decided to accept the challenge, but with strict safety conditions. "I will bring 5 children from the orphanage, all with different types of special needs," she informed them during a preparatory visit. "I'll also be accompanied by 2 social workers and a nurse. If anything goes wrong, even something small, the adoption process will be suspended immediately." Elizabeth and Tyler understood the seriousness of the situation and prepared with even greater care. On the day of the special visit, the 5 selected children arrived at the island. Emily Clare, 8 years old, who was visually impaired; Peter, 10 years old, who used crutches due to cerebral palsy; Mary Ellen, 9 years old, who had Down syndrome; Luke, 11 years old with a hearing impairment; and Camilla, 7 years old, who used a wheelchair like Tyler. The children's first impression upon seeing the island was one of pure wonder. They had never imagined such a beautiful and natural place, especially after spending years confined in the orphanage's grey facilities. "Tyler, do you really live here?" asked Emily Clare, amazed by the sounds of nature around them. "Yes, I do, Emily Clare, and it's the best place in the world to live." Tyler began to guide the other children through the activities he had prepared, showing how each of them could participate despite their specific limitations. For Emily Clare, he created a tactile trail using different natural textures, tree bark, smooth stones, dry leaves, that allowed her to explore the island through touch. For Peter, he developed exercises that strengthened leg muscles through gentle movements in the shallow river water. For Mary Ellen, he organized adapted gardening activities that stimulated her motor coordination and cognition. For Luke, he created a visual communication system using simple gestures he had learned and showed how the sounds of nature could be felt through vibrations. For Camilla, he shared all his discoveries about navigating the island in a wheelchair, including the adaptations he had created to overcome obstacles. Elizabeth watched everything with a heart full of pride and emotion. Tyler had transformed into a natural leader, inspiring and helping other children with a wisdom far beyond his 12 years. Margaret and her team were also impressed. What they witnessed on that island completely contradicted all the concerns and prejudices they had carried. "Margaret, look how all the children are engaged and happy," whispered Dr. Francis. "In a clinical setting, we rarely see this spontaneity and joy." The most emotional moment of the day happened when Tyler took all the children fishing in the river. Each of them, regardless of their limitations, managed to participate in the activity using creative adaptations the boy had developed. Emily Clare fished using the sound of the water to identify where to cast the line. Peter fished while sitting in an adapted chair that Tyler and Elizabeth had built. Mary Ellen managed to fish with the help of a simplified rod and reel system. Luke fished using visual signals to communicate when he had caught something. And Camilla fished from her wheelchair, positioned on a safe platform that Benjamin had helped build. When each of the children managed to catch at least one small fish, the joy was contagious. They shouted with happiness, hugged each other, and for the first time in a long while they felt capable and useful. "Aunt Margaret, can I live here too?" asked Emily Clare, using the affectionate term the orphanage children used for the female staff. The innocent question deeply touched Margaret, who began to truly understand the transformative potential of that place. During lunch, prepared with vegetables from the island's garden and fish the children themselves had caught, the conversation flowed naturally. The visiting children asked Tyler thousands of questions about his life on the island, and he answered them all with patience and enthusiasm. "Tyler, don't you miss TV and video games?" asked Luke. "I did a little at first, Luke, but there are much better things here. I can swim in the river, take care of the animals, plant food, go fishing, and best of all, I have a mother who really loves me." Tyler's reference to Elizabeth as mother did not go unnoticed by the social workers present. After lunch, Elizabeth organized a special activity. Each child planted a tree sapling on the island, symbolizing growth and future possibilities. "Every time you come back here, you can see how your tree has grown, just as you will also grow and develop," explained Elizabeth. The symbolic activity moved even the adults present, who began to truly glimpse the educational and therapeutic possibilities of the island. When it was time for the children to return to the orphanage, none of them wanted to leave. They said goodbye to Tyler with promises to return soon, and some even whispered that they would like to live on the island too. "Uncle Benjamin, when can we come back?" asked Camilla. "That will depend on many things, little one, but I'm sure this wasn't your last trip." During the journey back, Margaret and her team discussed intensely what they had witnessed. "Margaret, I've never seen anything like it," commented Dr. Francis. "Those children were experiencing something we rarely manage to provide in an institutional setting." "I know, Francis, but there are still practical issues to be resolved. How do we ensure proper formal education? How do we handle medical emergencies? How do we structure a program that adequately serves multiple children with different needs?" The nurse who accompanied the visit also contributed to the discussion. "From a medical standpoint, what I saw today was surprising. Tyler's physical and emotional development in these few months has been more significant than what many children achieve in years of conventional treatment." The professional observations confirmed what Elizabeth and Tyler had intuited. The island truly had unique therapeutic potential. A week after the special visit, Margaret returned to the island alone for a private conversation with Elizabeth and Tyler. "You two achieved something remarkable last week," she began, "but I want to be honest about the challenges we still face." Margaret explained that Mr. Gerald had intensified his campaign against Tyler staying on the island, arguing that a successful visit did not eliminate the long-term risks. He is pushing for Tyler to be transferred to a family in the city where he would have access to specialized schools and medical resources. "But I don't want to go to another family," protested Tyler. "This is my home, Mrs. Elizabeth is my mother, and this is the place where I am happy." "I understand, Tyler, but we also need to think about your future. How will you prepare for adult life living isolated here?" The question touched on a legitimate concern that Elizabeth also carried. "Margaret, I've been thinking about that," said Elizabeth. "What if we managed to bring education and medical resources to the island instead of taking Tyler away from here? How would you do that?" Elizabeth explained the more detailed plan she had developed with Benjamin's help. "We can establish partnerships with schools in the region for distance education, bring specialized teachers for regular visits, and create a structure that allows other children to also benefit from what we have here. It's an ambitious plan, Elizabeth, but it would require a lot of investment and institutional support." "And if we could get that support?" asked Tyler. Margaret fell silent for a few moments, weighing the possibilities. "I would have to talk with my supervisors, but perhaps it's possible to structure a pilot project. If you can demonstrate practical feasibility and consistent results, it could be replicated in other locations." The possibility greatly excited Elizabeth and Tyler, who immediately began working on a more detailed proposal. In the following days, they meticulously documented all the activities and adaptations they had developed, created a schedule of educational and therapeutic activities, and established clear development goals for children with different types of special needs. Benjamin contributed significantly to the project, using his network of contacts in the region to identify potential partners and supporters. Mrs. Elizabeth, I spoke with Dr. Charles, who is a retired doctor here in the region. He was very interested in the project and offered to make regular visits to the island. And I also spoke with teacher Sylvia, who worked for years with special education. She said she could help develop a curriculum adapted for the island environment. The possibilities began to multiply, and Elizabeth realized that the dream of transforming the island into a natural rehabilitation center was becoming more and more real. However, the obstacles were also growing. Mr. Gerald found out about the project in development and launched a more aggressive campaign to stop it. "It's madness to allow an unstable woman to experiment on vulnerable children," he declared in a meeting with municipal authorities. "These children need professional care, not dangerous adventures on an isolated island." The malicious comments began to sow doubts, even among some of the project's supporters. The pressure on Margaret and her team increased significantly. It was at this critical moment that an unexpected ally emerged. Dr. Regina Foster, a renowned physiotherapist specialized in natural rehabilitation, learned of the project through professional contacts and decided to visit the island personally. Dr. Regina had over 50 years of experience in the field and was nationally recognized for her innovative rehabilitation methods. Her opinion would be definitive for the project's future. Dr. Regina's visit was marked by a rigorous technical analysis of all the activities developed by Elizabeth and Tyler. She evaluated each adaptation, personally tested the exercises created by the boy, and asked a series of technical questions about methodology and safety. "Tyler, who taught you these exercises?" she asked, impressed by the biomechanical precision of the movements he had created. "No one taught me, doctor. I kept trying and seeing what worked best to strengthen muscles and improve balance." "And did you document the results?" Tyler showed a notebook where he recorded his daily progress: arm strength, endurance, coordination, balance. The data revealed a consistent and significant evolution. "This is remarkable," commented Dr. Regina. "You have instinctively created a rehabilitation program that follows many principles. It took me years to develop in a clinical setting." Elizabeth was also extensively evaluated by the specialist, who wanted to understand how a person without technical training had managed to provide such an effective environment for rehabilitation. "Elizabeth, how did you know these activities would be beneficial for Tyler?" "Doctor, I simply observed what made him happy and confident and tried to create more opportunities for those experiences. Do you realize you intuitively applied fundamental principles of positive psychology applied to rehabilitation?" Elizabeth didn't fully understand the technical terms, but she understood she had done something right. After 2 days of intensive evaluation, Dr. Regina reached a conclusion that surprised even herself. "Elizabeth and Tyler, you have created something here that I have rarely seen in decades of practice. A rehabilitation environment that combines technical effectiveness with genuine emotional well-being." "Does that mean the project is viable?" asked Elizabeth anxiously. "Not only is it viable, but it has the potential to become a revolutionary model. But for that, we need to structure it properly with professional support and appropriate resources." Dr. Regina offered to become the technical consultant for the project, bringing scientific and methodological credibility to the proposal. "I commit to supervising the development of a formal program, training Elizabeth in specific techniques, and monitoring the results scientifically." Dr. Regina's entry into the project completely changed its perception by the authorities. Her name and reputation brought a legitimacy that neither Margaret nor Elizabeth could have provided alone. When Mr. Gerald learned of the involvement of the renowned specialist, his strategy to discredit the project lost significant force. "How can he argue against a professional of Dr. Regina's caliber?" commented Benjamin, pleased with the new development. With technical support secured, Elizabeth and Tyler could focus on other practical aspects of the project. They began planning suitable physical structures to accommodate larger groups of children, developing more rigorous safety protocols, and creating a progress evaluation system for each participant. Tyler proved to be an exceptional collaborator in planning, always thinking of the specific needs of children with different limitations. "Mrs. Elizabeth, for children who have balance difficulties, We can create walkways with lateral support in this area here. And for those with motor coordination problems, we can make a raised garden bed where they can plant without needing to bend over. Tyler's practical and inclusive ideas constantly impressed Dr. Regina, who began to see in the boy a potential future professional in the field. Tyler, have you ever thought about studying physical therapy or occupational therapy when you grow up? She asked. I would love to help other kids like me, Doctor, but first, I want to finish my studies and help this project work perfectly. Tyler's maturity and focus were extraordinary for a 12-year-old, a result of all the adversities he had faced and overcome. 3 months after Dr. Regina's visit, the project was officially approved by the municipal authorities as a natural rehabilitation pilot program. Elizabeth received legal custody of Tyler, and the island was recognized as a specialized social assistance institution. The first official group of children arrived on the island on a sunny September morning. There were 8 children between the ages of 6 and 14, all with different types of special needs, accompanied by 2 physical therapists, a psychologist, and 2 specialized monitors. Tyler, now 13 and much more confident, naturally assumed the role of leader and mentor to the newly arrived children. "Welcome to our island," he said, radiating joy. "Here you're going to discover you can do many more things than you imagined." The 6-week program was structured to provide progressive developmental experiences, always respecting the limits and potential of each child. Elizabeth, who had received formal training from Dr. Regina, coordinated the activities with a confidence and knowledge that impressed visiting professionals. "Elizabeth, it's incredible to see how you've developed technically while maintaining the warmth and intuition you've always had," commented Margaret, who visited regularly to monitor the program's results. The results from the first group exceeded all expectations. All 8 children showed significant progress in different areas: physical strength, motor coordination, self-esteem, social skills, and personal independence. Most importantly, they developed a more positive perspective on their own limitations, learning to see them as characteristics to be managed creatively, not as insurmountable barriers. The success of the pilot program attracted attention from other regions of the state. Families with special needs, children began seeking out the island, requesting spots for their children. "Mrs. Elizabeth, how are we going to handle so much demand?" asked Tyler, excited but also worried about the growing responsibility. "We'll grow gradually, Tyler. What's important is maintaining the quality of what we do, not just the quantity." Elizabeth's wisdom in not getting carried away by the excitement of success ensured the project maintained its core values of personalized care and individual attention. 1 year after the program officially began, the island had been completely transformed. Suitable structures were built to accommodate up to 20 children at a time, always respecting the natural environment. A permanent team of professionals was established, including physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, and specialized educators. Tyler, now 14, had become a key part of the program. He not only helped with practical activities, but also served as an inspirational model for the participating children. "Uncle Tyler, do you think I'll be able to canoe by myself like you?" asked Laura, an 8-year-old girl who had recently arrived. "Of course you will, Laura. We'll practice a little each day and you'll see how fun it is." Tyler's affection and patience with the younger children deeply touched Elizabeth, who saw in him the compassionate and wise man he was becoming. During this growth phase of the project, an opportunity arose that would further change their lives. The State Secretary of Social Services visited the island and was so impressed with the results that he proposed expanding the model to other locations. "Elizabeth, we would like you to coordinate the implementation of similar centers in 5 other regions of the state. It would be an opportunity to help hundreds of children." The proposal was tempting, but Elizabeth hesitated before responding. "Mr. Secretary, it's a wonderful offer, but our strength lies in the personalized attention we can provide here. How can we ensure other locations maintain that quality?" "That's exactly why we need you coordinating. Tyler could travel to train other young mentors, and you could supervise the training of local coordinators." Tyler, who was listening to the conversation, had an unexpected reaction. I would love to help other children, but I don't want to leave our island. This is my home. Tyler's response revealed an important issue: the emotional attachment he had developed to the place where he had found his family and identity. Elizabeth perfectly understood her adoptive son's feelings. "Mr. Secretary, we accept helping with the expansion, but on the condition that our main base continues to be here. We can make visits and conduct trainings, but we want to keep our home." The negotiation resulted in an agreement that satisfied all parties. Elizabeth and Tyler would become traveling consultants, periodically journeying to other regions, but keeping the island as their operational base and permanent residence. 2 years after the program began, the island had become a national reference in natural rehabilitation. Delegations of professionals came from other states and even from other countries to learn about the methodology developed there. Tyler, at 16, had become an articulate and confident young man, capable of presenting the project to technical and academic audiences. "Our approach isn't revolutionary because it uses natural resources," he explained during a lecture for professionals in the field. "It's revolutionary because it treats each child as a complete person, not just as a set of limitations to be corrected." Tyler's eloquence and wisdom impressed audiences of experienced adults, who recognized in him a genuine authority based on lived experience. Elizabeth watched these moments with indescribable maternal pride. The boy who had arrived on the island fleeing an orphanage had become a young leader, inspiring changes throughout the system of care for special needs children. But perhaps the most emotional moment of this entire journey happened when Emily Clare, the girl with visual impairment who had participated in the first special visit to the island, returned as a volunteer instructor at 18. "Uncle Tyler, I graduated in specialized pedagogy and I want to work here with you," she announced during a visit. "Emily Clare, I always knew you would become an amazing educator," replied an emotional Tyler. Seeing one of the first children, helped by the project return as a professional, completed a perfect cycle of transformation and multiplication of positive impact. Today, 5 years after a desperate 12-year-old boy's escape from the orphanage, Hope Island, the official name the center received, serves over 200 children annually, trains hundreds of professionals, and serves as a model for similar programs in dozens of locations. Tyler, now 17, divides his time between university studies through distance learning, a psychology degree with a specialization in rehabilitation, and his work coordinating the center. He has become a wise and compassionate young man dedicated to helping other children discover their own potential. Elizabeth, at 48, found not only a son, but a life mission that gives meaning to all her past experiences. She has become a recognized authority in natural rehabilitation and human development. Benjamin, at 73, remains the official guardian of the island, transporting children and their families and serving as a father figure to all who pass through. His wisdom and life experience are valued by all the generations that coexist at the center. The story that began with suffering, abandonment, and physical limitations transformed into a narrative of love, overcoming, and multiplication of hope. The mysterious island that Tyler found in his desperate escape revealed itself not only as a refuge, but as the cradle of a social transformation movement. For every child who arrives on the island carrying insecurities and limitations, and who leaves discovering potential and confidence, the story of Tyler and Elizabeth multiplies, proving that sometimes the greatest miracles are born from moments of greatest despair. And when the sun sets over the river, painting the sky in golden hues, Tyler and Elizabeth often sit on the porch of the house where it all began, watching the children play in the yard and remembering the extraordinary journey that brought them there. "Mom, do you regret anything?" Tyler occasionally asks. "Never, my son. Every pain from the past was worth it to get here. And you?" "I am grateful even for the difficulty of using this wheelchair. It taught me that limitations can become superpowers when faced with creativity and love." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Tyler made the right decision by running away from the orphanage? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company.